what is it? When we talk about social distance, what is it really, And why is it that it's so difficult for people to appreciate and practice, right? Now, the whole idea of social distancing on a macro level, right, is to make sure that public spaces, places of mass gatherings are dissipated. No schools, no parks, no churches, no concerts, no mosque gatherings, no international travel, okay? All these things are important because the whole idea is separate the people from each other so that any spread, either to catch or to spread a virus, any kind of virus, is mitigated. It's very, very important, right? Now, on a micro level, it's between you and I. How do we make sure that through speaking, through coughing, through sneezing, and even some research is showing through breathing, I don't infect you if I happen to be infected. Number one is to make sure that the distance between you and I is far enough so that any droplets coming from me don't get to you. That's the first thing. That is a little challenging on a certain scale if you look at it, okay, in practice. So you can say 6 feet, right? You can say 6 feet apart, right? But what they found, Jaffa, is that in some cases, when they look under the, I don't know, like high-powered lenses, right? Coughs have been seen to transmit droplets as far as 16 feet and sneezes as far as 25 feet. That's how crazy it can be. Averagely, we say that a distance of 6 feet, we should be okay, right? So what happens? Ultimately, if you keep the distance and then you also put on a mask, that gives you optimal protection. And that's what we're encouraging. Yeah. Okay, that keep the distances and then also mask up. Later on, I'll discuss the issue of aerosols because for a lot of people, when you're in a room feeling safe with the people around you, somebody sitting next to you, somebody sitting next to you, it's like, oh, these are my buddies. We take off our masks. We're all guilty of it. We take off our masks and we let down our guard. What we don't realize is that the aerosol effect says that in about 5 to 10 minutes of you being in the same space, all of you have been surrounded by gases from just speaking. Droplets from just talking. It's surrounding you, swirling around you. You see. Now imagine that one of you was infected. Yeah. What's going to happen?
Everyone else will catch it.
So anyway, our colleague Kojo Ajiman did a report from downtown Accra.
Yes,
I think we
so
should
we'll
take a look at that.
Kojo Ajiman's report.
We'll come back and have a conversation.
This is unbelievable. So many people trooping into the central business district, breaking the rules of social distancing. Is it a case of panic buying or a case of people just wanting to break the protocols put in place to stop the spread of COVID-19?
I'm very, very scared, but I have to come. I'm here to buy cloth. I'm a seamstress. Since business is not going on, I have one customer, just one, in the whole of 2 months. And that person is scared of coming to the market. So I have to come and buy the cloth and go and sew it for the person. That's why I'm here.
As I was in the car, I was talking with the people that we are talking about the social distance. But when you look up to the people around the system, some are not wearing the nose masks, some are not using the sanitizer. So I was talking with them and I was afraid. Definitely, I was afraid as you are saying. It is very serious. The sickness is real. The sickness is real, so people should take it serious.
For some of them, though they are aware that they can easily contract the virus at such places, they have no option because of pressing economic demands.
Social distance in the area who here pa ba akwa say we hear say a crowd no wa here and then am say yen we ba say you do your shops in mu dia you make sure say you be ma your friends no social distance no.
I came to come and buy I sell materials, so I came to come and buy some of the materials. Yeah.
Why did you choose to do it on this particular day when a lot of people are trooping in there? Are you not scared of COVID-19?
I'm scared, but today is also a market day. So I have to come, and today is because it's market day, you get good ones. So if I stay in the house and come on Monday, I will not get the good ones I want. So that's the reason why I came today.
Police officers were seen on site not necessarily to enforce social distancing, but to enforce the mandatory wearing of face masks.
As you can see, many people are crowded, going to buy food items and other wares they think they need. Now, if you look to my left, traffic building up there. A lot of cars are moving into the business district from other parts of the capital. Now, to my right, more cars are moving into the Kantamanto area or the drag lane area, and you see a lot more people moving in there. So obviously people are going to team up there, breaking the rules of social distancing.
The CMB market was not any different. Traders who were seemingly observing social distancing had to violate the rules due to the influx of shoppers. Traders, shoppers, and passers-by are clearly breaking the social distancing protocol within the commercial centers. So what else can be done to enforce this preventive measure in these spaces?
Education is ongoing. Education is ongoing. You know the nature of the Ghanaian. The police and the metropolitan authorities are still educating the general public as to how to distance themselves when they are at the markets or when they are going to the markets. So we have not neglected that aspect of our responsibility. It's ongoing, even though it is the sole responsibility of the assembly. We also, as police officers and law enforcement officers, are also ensuring that they obey the rules as far as maybe the use of the mask and then social distancing, as you said, are concerned. You saw the size of the market and the number of officers that you are marching with the market. It's a constraint. But I hope gradually we will get there.
The response from the police clearly depicts a state of helplessness. But are people taking any personal initiatives at all to protect themselves from contracting the virus?
I'm being very, as I'm coming from here, I'm not even allowing anybody to come close to me. I am not allowing anybody to come close to me. I'm watching myself very, very carefully. I have my hand sanitizer here. It's here.
Yeah, I've been using the sanitizer. Yeah, it's in my bag, so I've been using it. Anytime I remove money from my pockets, I use it.
The minimum say Ghana for your son, Papa. The can I make us a Ghana for your son, the American. Sabi yare be nipa bebre fi se be agrobi. En kan wa ya se kan nua na ono ankasa na ne baby dia no behu se the ankrofo ka se yare we ana mansan ka no be gye. Apart from that, ye nyina nipa bebre nyini o. Nipa bebre nyini.
So you see the report there. He says, Ghana for Yasode. Now, I wonder if it's as simple as that, you know, because I think that people everywhere would typically go as far as they are permitted to go, right? And that if the enforcement is lax, the people will find ways around it, because there are realities, there are economic realities, there are challenges in our system. And of course, in a country like ours, where the group of the vulnerable is so large, you know, it makes it even more dire, you know, that we have these challenges. But The whole idea is that there's an infection in town, and we need to reduce the spread of the infection so that our health systems do not become overwhelmed. It's so critical. So critical.
Yeah, and for me, I think the reason why this is even more important right now is that our case count is at 4,700.
Yeah.
Of that number, over 3,000 are in Greater Accra region. Okay, so when you look at the regional breakdown, Greater Accra is actually the hot spot. So if we're saying that we're closing our borders, we're not letting people come into the country, mind you, the number of positive cases we have recorded from imported cases are not even up to 200. Mm-hmm. So if we're saying we're taking these measures to ensure we don't spread COVID-19 in the country, it makes no sense to me that in the Greater Accra region where we've recorded 3,892 cases, a market, one of the biggest markets in the capital city, would be behaving like this. Now, the role of the police is not just to ensure our security. They should also ensure that we comply. And compliance is not only by, threatening people, harming them. You should be educating them. As you are watching this video, what you don't see are billboards telling people that these are the effects of you not complying by social distancing. Where in this country, we see ads on why people shouldn't smoke cigarettes and the impact it will have on their health. We don't see any police person engaging citizens on what to do and what not to do. We are not seeing people getting fined for not complying by the social distancing rules. In this same country, when you go to certain supermarkets, you will see that they've drawn circles around for shoppers to know what to do.
Yeah.
This isn't unique to Ghanaians. Anywhere in the world, it's human nature. If you allow us to do whatever we want, we will take full advantage.
Yep.
We were all here when we had the partial lockdown because we knew that if you go beyond wherever it is you're supposed to stay, police will deter you. Most of us stayed at home. If we had not put those policemen out there, a lot of us would have continued doing whatever we want because there's nobody there to hold us accountable. So every time I see something like this, it's a failure on us. How are we educating Ghanaians on a grassroots level? This is a reflection of our failure to take COVID-19 seriously in a region that has recorded almost 4,000 cases. And there's absolutely no excuse. We can't be content with saying we've closed our borders, so that's fine. What other measures have we implemented in Accra to ensure that the numbers don't get worse?
My focus, Jiva, is on as much as the authorities need to step up, and do what it is that they need to do, right? The police, the city guards, all MMDAs, people need to just sit up and do their work, right? And make sure that we enforce, okay? But unfortunately, the way the directive has been given, it's more like an advice. It's like, oh, we encourage all people to wear a mask, and if you're going into the CBD, you can't go in if you're not you don't wear a mask, so we'll turn you away. Now, seriously, that doesn't solve anything, because you're literally saying that in the CBD, that's where we're going to enforce. But even that, per what we've been looking at, there's not much of an enforcement that's going on. At least I didn't see it. So I'm more looking at the individual responsibility, because if you understand what it is that can happen to this country, what it is that can happen to you, what it is that can happen to your family, you take responsibility for your actions, right? Now, I'm not playing with this thing at all, because, look, I read about a case in the U.S. This is in the 1918 Spanish flu. Two cities are a case study. St. Louis in Missouri and Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. These two cities, different outcomes, different actions, different outcomes. St. Louis, as soon as they recorded their first two cases of the Spanish flu, within 2 days, They went on a strict lockdown. Very strict implemented lockdown. Schools were closed, churches closed, everything was shut down. Within a couple of weeks, they had contained the situation. They didn't have an overburdened health system. They were fine. A few deaths happened. But look, the Spanish flu killed over 100 million people globally. That's how bad and devastating it was. But we forgot it. That's how we are, human beings, you know, and none of us were not alive anyway. Philadelphia, on the other hand, within a few days of the cases being found, they actually had a parade in town. 20,000 people were in that parade. Would you believe it? 3 days after that parade, all right, all the 31 hospitals in Philadelphia were jam-packed with patients. A week later, 4,500 people were dead. That's how serious this thing can be. And the whole idea is we don't want to overwhelm our health system. No matter how we try, we don't have the best health system in the world. And those who have the best health system in the world are struggling. That's what we need to remember. Those with the best health systems in the world are struggling. Our market spaces, we don't have any excuse for what's going on in our market spaces. We need to do better. We need to do better.
Yeah, and luckily we have an example right here in Accra, in Nima, where, you know, some of the market women were not initially complying by the social distancing rules, but then when you go inside of the market, you see them actually ensuring that they keep a few distance away from each other so that the customers are safe. So let's take a look at Nima.
The Nima market was closed on Friday by the Ayawaso East Municipal Assembly after traders failed to comply with social distancing directive. Authorities at the assembly decided to reopen the market after some deliberations with the various market leaders yesterday, where the traders agreed to operate a shift system to avoid overcrowding in the market. The traders were then given cards for them to know exactly how they are going to operate. At the time of City News' visit to the place this morning, it was observed that market women who were plying their trade on the street just outside the market were not observing the social distancing protocol. However, for the traders in the market, they were seen to be practicing the social distancing. Some traders who spoke to City News say they want the assembly to evacuate the traders selling on the street to save their market from being shut again.
I'm yet to see any police or military officer on the street controlling the people. In the morning, it was the women themselves who went to the street to drove out the fishmongers from Jamestown and the environs. So I'm still appealing to the authorities to at least bring in some enforcement to take care of this issue.
We don't have problem with the social distancing because from where I'm selling my goods and where this table is, there is a social distance between them. I put my box on the floor, then I select my tomatoes. This woman will be selling a thing. So from year to year, there is a social distance. We don't know what they are trying to tell us. If they say it is the market, then the market, we are. If you can go around the market and see, there is social distance because from year to year where the woman is selling things, it's a social distance. So we don't know what they are trying to tell us.
I feel excited because I'm staying at home, doing nothing, very bored. So at least, and then let's say there is no money. So at least I'm here to make money. Let's say if a customer comes, you see that they said 2 meters away. So I am educated, so I know 2 meters. So yeah. So when, for instance, if the person is here, I'm somehow inside the little just to, yeah. So that's how I observe mine.
Nima Divisional Police Commander ACP Abraham Akwe tells City News the police will use robust force to deal with the recalcitrant traders who are defying the directive on social distancing.
But now that it has come to our knowledge that no, they cannot abide with that external discipline, it means that we have to install the external discipline by deploying more security officers, the joint effort of the police and then the military, so that at least we will maintain sanity.
So does that mean you are going to employ more force?
Certainly. When persuasion fails, force must be applied. Yes, not necessary force. We are going to graduate our force. Yes, so you'll be a little robust at the tactical level. Yes, but if you go and then they comply, then there won't be the need for us to apply any force. But if when you go and then the people are recalcitrant, then you need to apply the minimum force in order to achieve our desired objectives.
And so you see what is happening in terms of the women at the market taking responsibility for their own safety and their own health, and making sure that they do the right thing. I think that the duty bearers have a lot more to do, but there's a suggestion from women in engineering as to some of the things that we can put in place. Let's take a look at that insight. We'll come back and continue the conversation.
On the satellite market, I think we suggested that we should try and decentralize the market. Growing up, I grew up in the barracks where each barracks had a market, and it took me a long time to know where Makola is, because then I didn't need to go to Makola for anything. And so if we still have those small markets and we can develop them, then people don't need to travel and congregate at the main market. Because if I live in Adenta, I should be able to go to Adenta market and get all that I want. If it's prices are generally fair, instead of moving to Medina market where it's crowded and there's no space for the traders. And I'm sure when these satellite markets are developed, these traders will move to these markets and then there will be enough space. I think the major issue is space. And then there will be enough space for everybody to sell. Then we should make the public aware that when you travel that far to, let's say, Makola to buy, you are buying your time and everything, if you quantify them as money. So the difference in pricing, let's say if I'm buying something from Medina for 1 cedi and I'm buying it from Accra Central for 1 cedi 50 pesos, really, you haven't really done anything by traveling all the way there to buy. And if we are able to develop these satellite markets, then it means that congestion at the main markets will reduce. We could have the spaces that we are actually advocating for, that between each trader there should be some few meters to avoid crowding and avoid transmission and all that. So that's one of the things that we were looking at. Satellite markets has to be developed. I know they are there, but they are people don't patronize them because they think that things are expensive in that space.
Okay.
But then if you make it attractive, and make instead of all the traders moving to let's say Agbogloshi to buy to sell their tomatoes, some can bring their wares to Kaneshi, come and bring to Odoko instead of going all the way to Agbogloshi. Then people can patronize in those areas.
Thank you very much, Naki.
So, as the mayor has said, redevelopment of these markets.
So that's an earlier conversation we had with the women engineers in Ghana. That was a couple of weeks ago. And as you can hear from our conversation, really simple, cost-effective solutions to ensure that we don't spread the virus. Yes, we've lifted the partial lockdown, but is there a way we can begin to perhaps lock down our markets in a way that we restrict movements? What would be ideal is you go to a market in Medina and you hear a van educating people. If you live around this area, stay in Medina, don't go out. And these are the ways you can ensure you won't catch COVID-19. You go to La Paz, you see the same thing happening. That way we are intentional and deliberate about containing the spread. But if we just say, well, we are suggesting you do this, we are suggesting you do that, and we don't actively engage the people, especially in Accra, then we're just paying lip service to the problem. And for me, I would like to see a lot more grassroots education that will help us contain the virus, especially in the capital city of the country.
Yeah. Well, we have some messages from you on Facebook. These are the outcomes of a bad government. This is Jesse Sego saying, these are the outcomes of bad government. I don't think the government should have done that. All right. Another message is from Odoy in Tema. He says, when it comes to COVID-19 issues, President Akufo-Addo has demonstrated that he is a competent and visionary leader that Ghanaians must depend on. Then one more here. Okay, so let me give you a couple of messages also from WhatsApp. Some of you sent messages from WhatsApp. The police should be hard on the market women, else they will never comply with the president's directives because people don't see the seriousness of the disease. There's a driver and his mate who are not wearing masks. The car number is AC 117016. All right.
Definitely. Now, thank you guys so much for joining us for Breakfast Daily. My name is Jifai Ekia Ametam.
And I'm David Gokusechi.
Don't go anywhere. News reviews next. We'll be right back.
Extra data, extra minutes, and extra unlimited calls. Not just that, even our extra data doesn't expire. You fill up, simply dial *111# to bundle now.
Airtel Tigo. Life is simple. Ghana is a beautiful country. There is so much of it you probably haven't seen, haven't experienced, haven't touched, haven't felt, haven't eaten. When this is all over, let's discover our land again with new eyes. Let's feel each other again. We are one people, brought together by destiny. Let's make that count. Let's show love for each other and our environment. Let's tell our stories, and let's watch and listen to our stories. There will be so much to tell. Ghana is a truly beautiful country. Be Ghana, stay in Ghana, experience Ghana, make Ghana great. And we will invite the world to come and experience Ghana too. But for now, stay home. Brought to you by the National Film Authority. Supports the Stay Home and Discover Ghana Later campaign. This channel supports the campaign.
Welcome back. It's Breakfast Daily on City TV. Thank you so much for staying with us. We'll take a look at our newspaper headlines, then some online stories, and then we'll introduce our guest already seated here with us. Let's start off with the Daily Graphic. On the front page of the Daily Graphic, we have vetting of Supreme Court nominees. Committee refers Hunyanuga to plenary. That story is on page 3. Faith-based organizations laud government for extending ban on public gatherings. That story is on page 13. The Mirror surprises mothers in Accra, Tema, and of course is connected to Mother's Day, and that story is on page 13 of the Daily Graphic. We'll now take a look at the Ghanaian Times. On the front page of the Ghanaian Times, we have "We'll deal with lawbreakers." That's coming from the president, and that story is on page 12. COVID-19 impacts on businesses, jobs, Inject 18 billion Ghana cedis to revamp economy. That's coming from the TUC to government. We'll now take a look at the final story here. Ghana's confirmed COVID-19 cases now 4,700. 494 recover, 22 die. That story is on page 11. Let's take a look at the New Crusading Guide. On the front page of the New Crusading Guide, we have Koku dares Mahama. Hang me if I was ever rude towards you. That story is on pages 3 and 10 of the New Crusading Guide. Gexim to register $5 billion earnings from export in 5 years. That's coming from the MD. EC's new voter registration could escalate COVID-19 spread. It's coming from a political analyst there. We'll now take a look at the front page of the Chronicle. Gang of 30 raids GPHA boss's house led by national security operative. That story is on pages 2 and 3. I softened my stance on sentencing after seeing conditions in prison. It's coming from Justice Honyanuga. Gas explosion kills 3 at Ashaman. May their souls rest in peace. We'll now take a look at our final newspaper. I'm talking about the Finder. On the front page of the Finder, we have TUC pump 18 billion Ghana cedis into economy, supports borrowing from heritage funds, wants law on BOG financing of budget deficit to be relaxed. That story is on page 2. EC accuses Haruna Idrisu of peddling falsehood. That story is on page 8. Preliminary job losses listed by TUC, and that story is on page 9 of the Finder. We will now take a look at some online stories. I'll be reading from citynewsroom.com. On citynewsroom.com, we have jump in COVID-19 cases proves growing community infections. That's coming from Dr. Ayensu Dankwa. Overwhelmed health facilities to increase COVID-19 deaths. It's coming from the Ghana Medical Association. That's not really good news there. No whistleblowing policy in 59% of companies in Ghana. That's coming from a KPMG report. I almost collapsed over Justice Honyanuga's responses at Vetten. Sorry, that's coming from Muntaka. New register compilation will observe safety protocols. That's coming from the EC. We'll now take a look at some business news from citybusinessnews.com. Cocoa Board CEO decries destruction of cocoa farms by illegal miners. Long-term plan required to protect farmers from shocks after COVID-19. It's coming from the Peasant Farmers Association. Power disruptions caused by Pokwase BSP project to end by Monday. That's coming from MEDA. It's great news for the people living in that area. Clara Arthur writes, embracing financial technology. The time is now. Money Wisdom Series, using your assets to create cash flow stream. We'll now take a look at some more local news from myjoyonline.com. Armed security officers face off with angry Obuasi residents who blocked access to isolation centers. Now take a look at some international news from bbcnews.com. Africa HIV deaths could rise by 500,000 amid pandemic. That's not good news for us at all, and hopefully this is just a projection that won't come true. For all of your news, you can go to citynewsroom.com, and for all of your business news, you can go to citybusinessnews.com. Now, throughout the news review, we want to hear from you. So wherever you're watching us from, please use the hashtag BreakfastDaily for us to hear your contributions to the conversation. And if you want to reach us directly, our WhatsApp line is 0550-585-832. If you're outside Ghana, we will still want to hear from you. So just use the country code +233 to send us your messages directly. I have been joined by Franklin Ni Amate. She's the Greater Accra Regional Chairman of the Ghana Association of Medical Laboratory Scientists. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Okay. I also have with me Ibrahim Tanko Amidu, who's the Executive Director of Star Ghana Foundation. He'll be joining us virtually. Good morning, Ibrahim.
Good morning. Pleasure to be with you.
Pleasure to have you. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And belated birthday wishes.
Oh, gosh. Thank you so much. We'll take a look at our first story. See, Ibrahim, you've made my head big. Take a look at our first story. I'm reading from citynewsroom.com, and it says, "Don't lift ban on mass gatherings yet. Laboratory scientists to government." So the Ghana Association of Medical Laboratory Scientists is advising the government against lifting the ban on public gatherings, given the increasing number of coronavirus infections in the country. Now, we know that on Sunday, the president told us that we were not going to lift the ban on social gathering, and that we have up till May 31st. So if we extend it to May 31st, but they're also asking for other measures that they will throw some light on for us. So they go on to say, I'm going to quote them, "Having accessed the increasing number of infections being reported by the Ghana Health Service and the lack of adherence to the preventive measures described by the Ministry of Health, states that there should not be the total lifting on ban on social gatherings as already in place. The measures in place should be enforced strictly." They go on to talk about increasing testing centers to all regions across the country. Our borders should still be closed, and ensuring that the citizens respect directives put forth by the government so that we can stay ahead of this COVID-19 fight. So, Franklin, I'll start with you on this story. The ban has been extended to May 31st, but why are you calling for, increased testing? You are not content with the contact tracing that we're doing and people reporting themselves when they're sick. You're saying we should go into the communities and test more. But before you even say that, what's your thoughts on the numbers as they are now? 4,700 positive cases in the country.
Well, if you followed the trajectory of the COVID in other countries that had their episodes before us, it is very clear that it should not be surprising to you if you look at the way the numbers are escalating. But what is more worrisome is when you go out there and there is a certain lack of understanding of the issues at stake. It's very disheartening. But I, as a health worker and understanding issues, can understand their perspective. I always likened it to the case of hypertension.
Okay.
You may be asymptomatic, you are going about your normal duties. To you, you are fine. You cannot even understand when they tie something around your arm and they tell you that you are hypertensive, so you need to be hospitalized and all that. Because you can't understand the implications. But people who have understanding knows that if that BP or blood pressure of yours is not properly monitored, it can cascade into you having stroke, renal failure, and the implications are very damning. So I can understand when people are reacting because of a certain lack of understanding of what we are dealing with. The COVID is such that about 80% of the people who have the COVID will have mild symptoms and will not even know that they have the COVID. And so when people are going about their normal duties and they think that they are healthy and the people that they are meeting are very healthy, they could be carrying the COVID. You may have the mild form of it, but when you pick it and you go to your loved one, your small girl, and then your old daddy, whom you are managing small, he gets it from you, and he's maybe the fatal type, and that will lead you to saying an unfortunate goodbye to your old man. And so that is the situation that we are dealing with. It is for this reason that we, as an association, have been worried and we have called for mass testing. Because at this stage, contact tracing may not be good enough.
But people are also, reporting whenever they feel the symptoms, and that's also going well.
Sure. But you see, when you do mass testing, you go ahead. Let me explain it so that you can understand it properly. Now, going ahead means that you do not fall sick before interventions.
Okay.
When you fall sick before interventions, it is very difficult. You may transcend into something fatal. But when we pick you whilst you are very healthy and we put intervention in place, it assures better outcome of the management of the disease.
As it stands now, even though we have 4,700 positive cases, we have almost 500 recoveries, and we've lost 22 lives, unfortunately. When you compare to other parts of the world, it seems as though we're doing fine as far as moving from positive to recovery cases. Do we necessarily need to do mass testing?
We necessarily need to do mass testing.
Why?
Why? Because to the extent that majority of the cases are asymptomatic, it is only mass testing that will let you ascertain the true burden of the disease.
Yes, but because you are asymptomatic and you have mild to no symptoms at all, isn't that a good thing that you may recover quickly? If we had a situation where majority of the cases were people who had very severe illnesses and were dying the way people are dying in other parts of the world, then maybe we can say, okay, we need to mass test now to save more lives.
Well, the mass testing will give us a certain leverage.
Okay.
What the mass testing will confer on us as a people is that we go ahead of the disease. It can inspire a certain confidence in us, and we can say that, having tested so many people, and this is the trend of the disease, then when we are taking a decision to open up completely, then we know what we are dealing with. So at this stage, without mass testing, it is premature for anybody to suggest that the ban should be lifted so that normal activities can go on. And so the mass testing that we are calling for will confer on us a leverage that the enhanced contact tracing never could place on us. The enhanced contact tracing, remember, has to do with a positive case and its, associations. So before you can be tested, you might have been noticed to have come into contact with somebody before we can test you.
Yes.
But the mass testing is a random approach.
But we also have community surveillance, right, where someone is sick or they are feeling symptoms, they call in, they test you, and then they help you get to where you need to be. So it's not just the contact tracing bit, but also directly testing communities, especially people
currently what
who
we are
have
doing
the symptoms.
Is the community surveillance that is where people who are having some symptoms
will report, yes.
Now, you can see that all these, there should be some exhibit of the disease before the testing is done.
Yes.
Mass testing, you don't need any exhibit at all. So there is no evidence of you coming into contact with somebody who had the COVID. You do not have any symptoms at all, but we just identify and test you randomly.
But as a developing country, do we even have the resources to implement this suggestion?
I have looked at this COVID thing carefully. And it is the case of you must find the resource anyway.
How?
Where there is a will, there is always a way. We were in this country, we thought that even a 3-week lockdown was not possible. Because a lot argued, which is the fact, that majority of Ghanaians, whether we like it or not, do hand to mouth. They go to work their daily wage before they feed families. And so we thought that it was impossible. But we found ways to sustain it for 3 weeks. It could have even gone further if that is what government feels strongly about. But they were informed by the science and the data, and we had to lift the lockdown. And so I am saying that if we want to do mass testing, we can do it.
Okay.
Of course, the mass testing will deploy another testing mechanism. It wouldn't be the PCR that you are aware, Noguchi and KCCR, and then some parts of the country now, Kolebu, is also testing.
Yeah.
That is expensive. Massively. But what we are recommending is another test which will test antibodies.
Okay.
What we call the rapid diagnostic test, very accessible. It can be tested at, almost all our primary labs.
And it's just
in the
as
country.
effective as the ones that we're currently doing in the testing centers that you're
for every testing, there are advantages and there are disadvantages. But it will give us the leverage.
Okay.
That one will be testing for antibodies. Antibodies are, products of the immune response. When you get the disease, the body so in the IDT testing, we'll be targeting the antibody that if you have had the disease, you should get some antibodies.
that would be fighting
That's
the
right.
Okay.
That's right.
Got it. Now, you're asking for more testing centers across the region. As it stands now, on Sunday, we heard from the president, we have 10 testing centers. Are you content with that now, or you still want testing centers in all the regions?
I think that the trajectory of the disease shows that we have gone into every region. And so if we are serious about...
Well, there are some regions that are still, they have not officially...
That is the more reason why we need mass testing.
Okay, but let me actually read the regional breakdown. So, for instance, Bono East, 0, official record of positive case. Ahafo region, 0. Savannah region, 0. Then you go to Bono region, they have 1 case. Northeast region, 2 cases. Northern region, 16. Upper West region, 21. OT region has 24 cases. Upper East region has 26. Volta region, 32. Eastern region, 49. Western North region, 56. Eastern region, 99. And then we have Ashanti region, 355. And then, of course, the hot spot right now, Greater Accra region, 3,892. Do we need testing centers in regions that are just recording 2-digit cases as opposed to, the epicenter where you have almost 4,000 cases? Shouldn't we keep it the way that we're doing it right now, as opposed to going to all the other regions?
So to the extent that we are not doing mass testing, even the regions that we have recorded 0, we are not too sure.
Okay.
Whether it is a true 0. We can be sure only when we have deployed a certain mass testing in those regions and the value still remains 0. That will convince us that indeed these regions are free from the COVID. So to the extent that we are not testing, it is not good enough to say that these places have recorded 0. Now, let me let you understand, whether we like it or not, we will deal with the COVID pandemic for some time. Even when we get out of this precarious moment, we will still be dealing with it. And so deploying test centers at various regions is the way to go, because eventually it will be incorporated into our everyday testing. And so we need to put in structures that will allow for us to continue to test. Now, to add to that, it is commendable that through the National TB program, government purchased a certain PCR machines, what we call the gene experts. And we have about 100 of them in our various district hospitals spread across the length and breadth of this country. Now, what we have to do is to get a special cartridges that will be able to test for the COVID too.
Okay.
You get the point?
Yes.
And so it is not like we are now going to do new purchases.
We don't need big testing centers. Okay, we just need the machinery to get it done.
The machines are there already.
Okay,
all
so
we need
the
is
cartridge,
a special cartridge.
so it might not cost us that much.
It must not cost us that much.
Okay.
And so it is commendable. Government has taken steps to tool us in this direction already.
Okay, so we can definitely get there.
Of course.
All right, let me bring Ibrahim Tanko in here. We're talking about the probability, the Ghana Association of Medical Laboratory Scientists recommending that we should do mass testing across the country and also have testing centers in all regions in addition to ensuring that we don't lift the ban on social gatherings. Your thoughts on this, Ibrahim?
Well, I think if it's feasible, it should be a way to go. I don't have the kind of technical details that my colleague has, but I've also read about the challenges other countries have faced in rolling out mass testing. So my point is that if we are not able to do the kind of mass testing that is being proposed, either because of the cost or other I think during the lockdown or shortly after that, government identified some epicenters in Accra and zoomed in on all those areas to carry out more detailed or more widespread testing than in other areas. Could we use that kind of strategy if we do not have the resources of identifying the epicenters and then moving in there to do mass testing within a localized area? That's what I would say on that. And also to say perhaps mass testing eventually, but could we gradually scale up our capacity? Because as of now, I'm not sure we do have the capacity to do mass testing from what I am hearing.
What do you mean by capacity?
Capacity in terms of the resources, whatever they use for the testing, is it reagents or whatever?
Yeah, because we now have 10 testing centers, and if I'm quoting you right, you said some of these district centers even have the machinery, so they just need the cartridge to plug in, and then I don't know, do you plug it in or I don't know.
So you slot it in.
You slot it in and it works. Okay, I hope that helps.
Yeah, and the human resource to go out and do that and etc. So what I'm saying is that we could scale up over time. So we do give ourselves a period of time that says that, okay, within the next 5, 6, whatever months, we scale up to this point, rather than perhaps, and that may not be the intention of the statement that was issued, to say we're beginning mass testing immediately. But I think whatever would help us to get a handle on this epidemic is welcome and should be seriously considered by government. But I also just wanted to add my voice to the calls on government not to lift the ban on mass gatherings. Yes, I think it would be quite suicidal if we attempted to lift it at this stage where everybody's worried about the increasing numbers. But I think government should be more prescriptive about how we implement the guidelines that have been given. So in the markets, for example, because I've seen pictures of places where even for the shops, they mark out where each person should stand and etc. For the mass transport, I was just looking through what the British government gave out yesterday, even though there are criticisms of that. But very detailed, very prescriptive guidelines of what to do and what not to do in each of those situations. I think that may actually engender more compliance. And of course, the enforcement that we need to enforce. We've seen in the past 2 weeks or 3 weeks, traditional areas installing or skinning or installing chiefs with all that has gone with it. And once it happens in one place and happens in a second place, then the snowball effect, begins to take effect. So I think it is quite important that we enforce the ban without fear or favor, even though we are in an election period. Mm-hmm. And I think the involvement of community leaders, including faith-based leaders, in explaining these guidelines, these prescriptions to the citizens is also quite important.
Okay, thank you very much, Ibrahim. Last thoughts on this mass testing suggestion that you have, and some of the concerns Ibrahim raised as far as implementing it, the manpower you
need. To guide Ibrahim perhaps have looked at the costing involved in doing the PCR test. In deploying the mass testing, what we recommend is RDT testing, rapid diagnostic testing, and that is far lesser than what we are currently doing in Noguchi and KCCR and the likes. And so that would be the first line, RDT testing. It is heartwarming to inform you that a member of our association, Anthony Bassing, whom was interviewed here the other day, in conjunction with KNUST, formulated, a RDT test kit. Yeah. And is currently in Noguchi undergoing the validation steps. Once that is cleared,
we interviewed him actually.
And cleared for use, it will give us, enormous advantage to deploy the massive testing, where we do the RDT, and then based on the information gathered on the RDT, we will forward you to do the PCR confirmatory one. Remember the PCR, so what we are calling for is not to replace the PCR with the RDT,
but to complement it.
Complement.
Because we can't assume that the general public may not be positive.
Is PCR.
Okay.
The gene expert that I spoke to you we use for TB is also PCR.
Okay.
And so the gold standard remains the PCR. It remains the PCR. But what we are calling for is RDT that can be done, more easily. It is very accessible. We can test it across the length and breadth of this country, and that will let us ascertain the true burden of the disease. And so that is done. We do not know what we are dealing with. We are not sure what we are dealing with.
Thank you very much, Franklin. We'll go for a quick break on that note. It is still Breakfast Daily on City TV. Thank you so much for staying with us. Again, we want to hear from you. So wherever you're watching us from, use the hashtag Breakfast Daily for us for your thoughts. You can reach us directly on WhatsApp line. Our WhatsApp line is 0550 585 832. If you're outside Ghana, the country code is +233. We'll be right back.
It's here, the Express Pay app. More social, more power, more services. Experience a cooler way of payments with exciting new features. Want to go social? Upload a cool image to add a personal feel to your account. Payments are even more seamless with an enhanced process. Mark some accounts as favorites so they are super easy to access. Even cooler, view payment due dates and check remaining balances for your favorite accounts. Want to repeat a payment? Do that right from the History tab. Have all your money in one place with a sleek look and feel. Bank Direct has had an awesome makeover. You can now send money instantly to 22 banks and counting. Express Pay, payments simplified.
Welcome back. It's Breakfast Daily on City TV. Thank you so much for staying with us. Again, it's an interactive show. So if you're watching us on Facebook, just comment down below. If you're on other social media platforms, the hashtag is Breakfast Daily. And if you want to reach us directly, our WhatsApp line is 0550 585 832. If you're outside Ghana, the country code is +233. I've received some of your messages, so I'll read them briefly and then we'll continue the show. Junior in Tamale says, I have information that the medical laboratory scientists have a signed National Health Laboratory Policy lying at the Ministry of Health. I want to find out why it is not being launched. We have knowledge now that they play a key role in detection of diseases. Why not launch their policy to make them effectively function? So please throw some light on this policy you have lying at the Ministry of Health.
It is very true. I think somewhere in 2014, under Honorable Madame Sherry Aite, the Minister of Health then, the National Health Laboratory Policy was launched. We're hoping that it will be implemented because it will transform our space as medical laboratorians.
What kind of impact would it have?
The impact it will have is that it takes into account issues of infrastructure of the lab, accreditation. Oftentimes you hear discrepancies in results and it is not the best. Now, what the policy will institute is to look at the governance structure of the lab, who heads the lab, who is fit to be in the lab, safety issues, and all other things have been carefully drafted in the policy. Take note that this policy drafting was sponsored by CDC because they saw that the country laboratory structures were in disarray. Everybody was doing bits and pockets of laboratory, what I call one corner laboratory, and everything was not properly coordinated. So they saw that there is the need to put everything in perspective. And so they put together this beautiful policy that we are hoping will see the light of day. Indeed, if we had launched this policy, we wouldn't be sitting here talking of expansion of testing centers because that would have been in place already. The policy spelled out clearly where disease control laboratories should be. All our regional capitals will have national public health reference laboratories which will be clothed with the capacity to do the COVID testing in this country. Here we are saddled with COVID-19, and it took a research center to come in and do the testing for us. They've done a yeoman's job. I salute my colleagues at Noguchi, and we appreciate the work that they are doing. But the point is that shouldn't be their focus in the first place. Here is a disease that is a novelty, and everybody is running helter-skelter, picking bits and pockets of knowledge and putting it together. If Noguchi had focused on the research bit, I believe that they would have told us much more better ways of handling this COVID. But here they are saddled with testing, a mandate that should have been that of the clinical setting practitioners. But because the structures were not put in place, here we are. And so it is my recommendation to government that health delivery is a teamwork. And no profession within the healthcare continuum can be sidelined. If you sideline it at your own detriment. And so my recommendation is that after the COVID, let us come around the table, let's look at the bottlenecks that is stalling the implementation of this fine workable policy so that we can together implement it. Because the COVID had shown us that those we thought had superior healthcare systems are even crumbling. According to COVID. My recommendation is that we should build our own because we have capacity. It is heartwarming when in this COVID trajectory you could see us match boot for boot other advanced countries in our testing. We even have capacity to override them.
But don't you think we should be building these labs now? Because a couple of weeks ago, we heard from the president that we're going to get 88 new district hospitals and 6 new regional hospitals. Can't we push labs?
That is why we have also looked at the situation. We are making recommendations to government.
Isn't this the best time to push that agenda?
Well, it will be unreasonable at this point to insist that we push that agenda.
Why? You just said Noguchi should be focusing on research so that you guys focus on the testing.
Sure, it is for that reason that we have asked that we deploy our gene expert so that at least we can gradually win Noguchi so that they can focus on their mandate.
Okay.
You see?
That makes sense.
But to insist that we implement the policy at this point is not reasonable. Because, of course, the policy has been lying down for some time. There is a need to overhaul it and then implement it properly.
Thank you very
much.
much.
We shouldn't go back to sleep. I am worried because as a country, we seem not to learn from the disasters that has befallen us. So to that extent, I am reasonably worried. But I insist that government this time will not be allowed
to get away with
it.
Thank you very much. We get to the rest of our messages. Musa Inima says, truth be told, the government has never been serious in Ghanaians, serious with Ghanaians on COVID-19. All they are thinking is elections. Real-time data will never be churned out. 4,700 cases. Where are they kept? Are they in quarantine or moving in the system? Okay, so I think all of them are in quarantine. I'm hoping that they are. The government must do more to educate citizenry on COVID-19 again. Decongestion in our markets will go a long way to avert the impact the pandemic has on us. This is coming from Tiano in Asaman Kese. During the president's 7th address, he promised a COVID-19 testing laboratory at the CCTH. Madam, please use your station to remind the Ministry of Health to speed up the implementation. 2 weeks turnaround time for COVID-19 testing for people in the central region is not fair. Good morning. What's the status on that? Have you heard any status? So it says during the president's 7th address, he promised a COVID-19 testing center laboratory at the CCTH. And he wants to know the status on that. Well, maybe the Ministry of Health. Yes. So maybe you'll get some answers towards the end. So we'll take a look now at our second story from citynewsroom.com. It has to do with market women in Bolgatanga and the police, beating them up for not relocating to a spacious market, and that spacious is in quotation. I'll read the story briefly, and then we'll watch exactly what happened, and then I'll let Ibrahim take a bite at this one. So on citynewsroom.com, it says here, Bolga, traders beaten, arrested for protesting relocation to spacious market. The Bolgatanga Municipal Police Command has arrested 26 market women for not abiding by social distancing order to demonstrate against the Bolga Municipal Assembly. The women were arrested and also beaten by police officers on orders of the Bolgatanga Municipal Police Commander, Chief Superintendent Richard Anaba Salifu. So the market women, numbering over 100, took to the streets yesterday morning to demonstrate against the Assembly's decision to relocate sellers of cereals from the Bolgatanga new market to the old market. So the women are going to explain why they did not want to relocate. And let's pay attention to how the police engaged them as well. Let's look at the video.
The Bolgatanga Municipal Security Committee held a meeting with leaders of the traders of the two markets to enforce social distancing to prevent the spread of COVID-19 in the markets. The stakeholders agreed to the relocation of cereal vendors at the new market to the old market. But early Monday morning, the women staged a demonstration against the agreement. The women marched through the principal streets of Bolgatanga to the Bolgatanga Municipal Assembly to demand that the decision be reversed.
The old market is too small for us. It can't contain all the people in the market. Yes. And you are talking about coronavirus. You are asking us to relocate to the old market. How can we relocate to the old market when the old market is small for us? Look at how the new market is. The number of people in the new market. How can we enter inside the old market? We can't enter.
The police, in their bid to disperse the crowd, fired warning shots and beat up some of the protesters. 26 of them were arrested subsequently. The Bolgatanga Municipal Police Commander, Chief Superintendent Richard Anaba Salifu, told City News the suspects will be prosecuted for defying public safety orders.
I told them that they should disperse because they didn't follow the instruction. What the president ordered, that social distancing, they have defied it. So in that wise, what else do we do? I told them to disperse with the hope that they will comply, and they will not budge, and they were still trying to move forward. So I ordered my men that they should whip them, and as many as we could, we should arrest them so that we'll process them for court. It was when we started whipping them and arresting them that they started dispersing. So we managed to arrest a number of them Currently, we are processing them for court.
Some of the market women who were arrested spoke to City News.
Tibaya yuna ter yunti pola ngai makopana ba ita mame zota mazata ta pa dina ingi ma vermet matala puro de vira mabala ta vira a verma lo de ta ba kafe kala mira ma meti o ma da free matala puro mi yete ta dalanti ba ko se mabla de tama wa kala na wa yu da alabatu kola ikida yin ko wa ti kin sawabi ba kin da kala ya ba meti ba da zo da ala ko ti saba na mbo bila ka ko saba bo kala mi gan bila ba na sa han da kin ta pa bila da bala no saroba triyate ya itne sela la bala ma tun ba ti tun ala so ti ka boka ya ba ti ditati da ala ga ti pa tun lo ko la sela ti dola zaba ti ka sagge ikisina ti da da bala to bala disle ne la ti soba disle ta bila zuo ga ba na rekre para sela la la soba triya no ti polele la soga pala ko ta gurte mera ya ba ti nerval ba saba kin ta pa triyate ti kan sagge ti ta ba ta bona polite ga ti kin ta bona da ba ka zuba ka sa yele Triana ti attatia gato ma pomra tinyo ga mera to ga tura to ba saba zo pala zu tura to ba na ba meta pa
ne wala da adam ne en fi o kule tere ko ma mindi mazo ma ko la bene force manin va verme le turu ma wa ana tinera kana album tin takin ta ko ga wa ana ta mutu o ga en ba sa o ba meta tin so da bene da la ta da bona da ta da wa mo le le tiri vetu to le za zo kala ga tin da la kan da ana from zina ya so la mu de salan de da ngo horo to wa da na te kandi bale si so te ita te wa na te pola la songo na tola ba ka go di sita azote ni so ma kana za amara te ma ken na ge yete ti yele ba ma ka yena la ti wa azab la ko te wa inse.
Efforts by City News to speak to the Municipal Chief Executive for the Bolgatanga Municipal Assembly, Joseph Amiyure, on the matter proved futile.
So there you have it. The police wanted to relocate the women, and they were saying that moving from where they are to the new place will not make any difference because they will go and add on to the population there, and it will be even more difficult for them to respect social distancing. Somehow that escalated to brutalizing these women and treating them like criminals. So we'll hear from Ibrahim Tanko on this story.
Yeah, thank you very much. Unfortunately, because I'm joining you virtually, I have not been able to watch the video. But then listening to the narration, I'll first start by saying that you don't use an illegality to correct an illegality. If it was a demonstration was an illegality, there's nowhere in our laws that we prescribe the cripping of the women and all demonstrators as a way of cripping it. The police should have ways of managing these things without resorting to the. I heard one of the women talking about the pregnancy and the fact that she had even told them that she was pregnant, and despite that she was brutalized. So I think in that sense, the management of this thing hasn't been done well by the police. And then the second aspect for me is that, yes, the pandemic poses an existential threat to all of us, and therefore everything enable us to fight it, including decongesting places, and ensuring the appropriate physical distancing. But then if you listen to the women's issues, you'll find out that they also have a point to make. They said, well, if you're talking about physical distancing, where you are sending us even makes it more crowded than even the old place where we were. And I think that is a legitimate grievance or a legitimate concern that they raised. And therefore, it is the way of addressing this that I think degenerated into that. And the way could have been found either of shepherding the women or allowing their leaders to go and meet the municipal chief executive, or even for the municipal chief executive to come over and meet with the women to explain the thinking behind this. Yes, you may have met with their leaders, but sometimes we do know that in Ghana there's a deficit of trust between citizens and their leaders at all levels. And so if perhaps that information has not gone down very well or well understood, extra effort should be made, because you're looking at long-term compliance. You're not looking at immediate. So if people do not understand why they have to do certain things, or they think that taking the new measure would even expose them to greater danger, you're not going to have long-term compliance, and therefore you will keep on having these issues of people trying to disobey what you've said and you ask them to do.
What lessons can we learn from this experience as we will be moving to other marketplaces to ensure people are respecting social distancing protocols? What should have been the right thing to do? Because we know that, I mean, when you talk about the police, if they, like he rightly said in the video, we asked them, they didn't comply, so we decided to beat them and arrest them. How should we handle this in a more humane way?
I think every situation, has its own dynamics and should be treated as such. I saw a video of, I think, an event in Accra involving the traditional authorities going to the sea. And then, I think the police moved in with water cannon or whatever, and detonated, So I think the police need to go back to the drawing board to see, in these kinds of situations, how do we de-escalate and then engage to address the concerns that we have. Everybody's scared about the pandemic, and therefore people would act in ways in which they think would enable them to secure their lives or protect their lives. For the Accra one, for example, what I heard was that the traditional authorities felt that they needed to go to the sea to pacify the gods, to ensure that they are protected. You may not agree with it, but where they sit, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So for these women, also see that market where you are asking them to go will even be more crowded and would expose them to greater danger. There is a need to engage with them to discuss that. So I think the whole issue of policing in this new normal we have that the pandemic has introduced is something that needs to be discussed. I think the second thing is about the kinds of communication that we have. Yes, we pass it through their leaders and etc. But information to be useful has to respond to people's concerns and issues. Physical distance, do this, go there. That is the basic information. But when you tailor the information to take account of the concerns that they have raised, we are going to be more crowded in there. And therefore, in terms of the communication to the market women, you factor these concerns in there to say, well, we recognize that maybe in the short term there may be this, but these are the measures that we are taking to ensure that you are not exposed to danger, or the basis on which you have these concerns are really not founded because we have done our things and etc. and etc. It may have been done, it may not have been done. I think that is something. And I think the third one is brave leadership. What I want to talk about, brave leadership. Okay. That's when the thing got to that point, I expected that maybe some leaders, either the assembly or community or whatever, should have attempted to meet with this.
But if the police, it's come from the perspective of you've broken a law, so we are criminalizing you. How would someone come in now to advocate for you?
But if you are criminalizing, you don't whip me.
Was it even right for them to criminalize the women as opposed to educate them?
Well, if you are looking at it from a purely legal sense, perhaps they didn't get a permit for the demonstration. So in that sense,
they are right to do that. Okay.
Exactly. But like I said, the context matters a lot in terms of informing your containment strategies. Okay. And I think I don't see the way in which the police try to contextualize their response.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ibrahim. Franklin, your thoughts on this? Yeah. Market women in Bolga and the police.
Well, the issue in Bolga leaves so much to be desired. You see, in this country, we tend to sideline professionals. There are people who are specially trained to manage change. And so they are better placed to do some of these things properly. If you look at what transpired, you will see that both the market women and the police have an issue. The police says that relocate to the old market because it is more spacious. The market women are of the view that what you are asking us to do will even make the situation more dangerous. Because if we are to observe social distancing, then to them, the old market is even more crowded. So you can see that there is a disconnect. But you see, when we are analyzing issue, there is a need to do a bit of background checks and root cause analysis on all that. If you are the type that has followed, the politics of market siting movement, you will know that women have issues when it comes to movement. Because people who have places in old markets, when they move to new places, for some reasons, they lose their places and their portions.
And their customers will find it.
Of course, and then their customers will not find them. And so it is inherent for market women to resist movement. What can cure that is dialogue, and not the Rambo style that we saw. We saw the other day on TV where a whole panel came down, explained issues of COVID, why people should stay at home. And it worked. We all lauded him and we applauded him. So when the Bible says that wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of our times, it is not everything that you achieve by enforcement. Some you achieve with dialogue. And I believe that if proper consultations were made, some consultations were made, but you see, the thing about managing change is that whether with COVID or not, it is gradual. I can understand that these are not normal times. The agencies will make, policemen frustrated, wanting to implement it almost immediately. But if we engage experts in change management, they will pre-inform you that this is likely to be the reaction. What do we do to curtail that in trying to solve a problem we don't create? Because you can see the chaos resulted in more anger, more shouting. Obviously,
confusion.
If people have COVID, we would have even escalated and spread it more. And so moving forward, let us be guided and do proper analysis and engage professionals to do what they are trained to do. We can't assume that we know it all and then take certain things in our own hands and begin to enforce them. That is not the way to go.
Thank you very much. We'll take a look at our final story here. I'm reading from citynewsroom.com, and it says, new register compilation will observe safety protocols. That's coming from the EC. So the Electoral Commission has said it will observe the necessary protocols when it begins the compilation of a new voters register. I'm going to quote what the EC said. They said all stakeholders are hereby reminded that plans are far advanced for the compilation of new voters register with a new voter management system for the upcoming 2020 presidential and parliamentary elections. So connected to the presidential and parliamentary elections, they're saying they're still going to continue on with the 2020 new voter register. But there are some political analysts who are saying that the new voter registration could escalate the COVID-19 spread. So should we continue on with registering new voters and observing social distancing, or should we abort it altogether? Ibrahim, let me hear your thoughts on this.
I have some very serious concerns about the stance taken by the EC. I think if you look at our experiences with the national identification, the issuance of the national identification, even in the areas where we said they had.
Okay, we have an issue with your sound there. We'll try and get Ibrahim back, but in the meantime, Franklin, let me hear your thoughts on EC still continue on with their new voter register and assuring us that we will, respect social distancing.
The COVID pandemic has changed everybody's financial. As I sit here, I would have been very glad if you had introduced me as Dr. Franklin Amate Amar. That title I've been withheld by COVID.
How?
Because I'm unable to finish my processes leading to the award of the doctorate. And so I am sitting here. So everybody's center of attraction have changed. It is the ambition of every bishop to go to church Sunday and preach the word. It is the ambition of you to engage with your family openly, do your birthday parties ordinarily. If there are funerals, you dispose of your loved ones. But everybody's financial have changed. And so please, let the Electoral Commission be properly guided. When it is time for them to roll out a new registration, nobody will restrain them. But at this time, it is premature. It is premature because if they have to put in some interventions, what it means is that then they will be competing with health workers for the same PPEs. Now, when you are out there and you hear the colossal and the gargantuan amount of PPE announced, you cannot understand why there is always a crave by health workers for more. May I respectfully submit to you that PPE is complementary. If you provide only gloves without face masks, in some procedures it cannot be adequate enough. Now, in some instances, when you are taking sample for COVID, when you clothe yourself in PPE, you change per client or per patient. What it means is that for if you have 6 clients that you're attending to, you will change the PPE.
Okay.
So the more colossal it is, as you say, it is disposable.
Okay.
And so every day there will be a need.
Thank you.
So will we misapply PPEs for
The voter
UC
registration. Okay.
to do safe registration for all of us? And then as we see the numbers soaring and nobody, the COVID is behaving in a funny way.
Okay.
Nobody knows where it is heading. So we need to err on the side of caution.
Thank you very
So
much.
my guidance is that UC should restrain themselves. But the point must be made that the president will have to lift the ban before they even talk of registration. And I believe that when the figures shows that we can lift the ban and the president lift it, I would have no hesitation and qualms at all endorsing the EC to do their
Thank
mandate.
you very much. I have a few seconds. I hope Ibrahim Tanko is still with us so that he can share his thoughts on this EC matter.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay. Yes. Like I was saying, I think that we should be guided by past experiences. The way the national identification exercise went, even in the eastern region where the NIA said they had to put in the necessary protocols, showed that it is really quite impossible to do these kind of things, in the ways in which they imagine can be done safely. So this is not the time to be bringing people together, particularly for an emotive issue like the voters' registration, where political parties are competing to bring their people to register and etc. It would be absolute chaos and determined in our fight against
COVID-19. Thank you very much. Ibrahim Tanko Amidou is the Executive Director of Star Ghana Foundation. And of course, Franklin Ni Amarte is the Greater Accra Regional Chairman of the Ghana Association of Medical Laboratory Scientists. And the next time he joins us, he'll be Dr. Franklin Ni Amarte. Thank you so much for being with us. Up next, we'll be listening to the Information Ministry. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
There is no promise we cannot keep. There is no commitment we cannot honor. There is no